Chapter 5 A Love Alive. Solitude is not comfort. Solitude is not comfort. Danny repeated this as a means of convincing herself that she was not uncomfortable with the feeling of being observed by the reader. Observation, she knew, in quantum terms was non-existent, as just the act of observation has an effect on that which is observed. So in knowing the reader was present, becoming more aware of her as each second passed, she was not only observed, but also affected by the reader. Or would it be effected, she voiced her thoughts aloud, in a stream of consciousness form that neglected to voice her recognition of this disjuncture of her spoken words from her previous repetition to her current speech? No, that would be if the reader was creating me. And would that be something that would be done by the writer? What would that say about free will? That I'm just a figment of imagination from some being that is crafting my life for amusement or for amusing the reader? She shook her head. No, I'm the writer, she said, and felt a chill along her spine. If there is something that is creating my life other than me right now, then, she looked around, then give me sign. But she felt it might have wanted something more specific than that. If I told you what sign to give, then it would be me telling you and me creating my life, not you. She waited, wondering to what extent her existential crisis of her creating the life she lived would reach. What precipice she might tumble over to land squarely where she feared she would, in the realm of feeling as though all she lived through was something long ago decided and locking her with heavy chains of fate to the routines and customs which she would never escape. It would not matter, as she could keep herself moving forward through days and weeks, putting up with times when she was making money, trying to have personal restraint when spending money. Great, she said to herself. Even my existential crisis is centered around money. She started her car. If I can ever afford to buy myself, I might want the newer model by the time I get there. With her car running, she heard her words regarding the newer model, and she haphazardly decided to let the engine burn fuel while she reached into her pocket to turn her phone on with the intention of texting the person who came to mind when she heard her words. She watched the animation on the touchscreen of her phone and thought of who had designed and constructed the device. She thought of the stories of human rights violations that circulated regarding the near-slave conditions lived by the workers half a world away who assembled the phones, like her own. She wondered how the designers of the devices fared in the way of compensation, and how many people were responsible for the distribution of all the products, so this one could be in her hand right now. She tried to imagine the network of signal towers and cables to which she was connected, and all the human intellect and effort that went into creating and maintaining something she relied on so greatly that she could not understand how people who lived before it got by from day to day, moment to moment, that the instantaneous communication with others and access to information was so soothing. She did not want to think of how dissatisfying life would feel without it. She also thought about how her connection to that network hinged upon money paid to allow her access, and how little she thought of that matter, as her father in Dallas paid her phone bill more as a way to guarantee communicative access to her than to provide her with a means of accessing something on which she had come to rely. The thought of her father paying her phone bill also reminded her how he also paid the rent on her apartment and her tuition at Austin Community College, where she would be expected by him and her mother to finish her associate's degree and transfer to become a student at the University of Texas. It made her wince a little and wish her phone would already be done starting up so that she could find the solace of her favorite distraction. There it was. A small tweet and a little icon of an envelope appeared. When she pulled down the shade, she saw that there were two texts from Alex. One read, "Hey girl, text me when you're done with dinner. There's a bottle of Shiraz to be opened at my place." And the other, a minute later, "Or your place if you'd rather." And Danny's heart coursed blood through her with the pure intention of causing the eruption of a smile upon her lips. She overlooked the text speech, which she hated from others, the colloquial use of written language present and socially acceptable in most cases by people when using text messages to communicate. The same kind of written slang which she despised so much that she used it to draw conclusions about the education and intelligence of others was something sleek and cute when Alexandra did it. Danny knew that she was infatuated with Alex, and did not like this position she was in regarding the infatuation. Alexandra, 2 years her junior, just started college this year right out of high school. Already a student at the University of Texas, with a thin body and long arms and legs that complemented her long face topped with flowing dark hair. Alexandra and Danny met at a dive bar called Hole in the Wall one night. The all ages club would stamp underage patrons, who would then try to have alcohol snuck to them by patrons of legal age. The entire practice was common and illegal, and it fostered more than one couple with a sense of attachment that would have otherwise not been so readily developed if not for the shared illicit activity. Danny had managed to get a mixed drink to Alex, and had a wonderful conversation regarding their backgrounds and the attentions of others. Danny made it clear that she was a lesbian, and that she found Alex very attractive. Much to her pleasure, and perhaps due to the alcohol, Alex had not seemed fazed by the information. Instead, she seemed enthused by the prospect of having Danny's affection and attention focused on her. That is what worried Danny. Her own journey towards self-acceptance had been an arduous one, not one that felt like some kind of experiment in sexual expression. She had never considered the idea of her attraction to other women as something light and flippant, which Alex seemed to easily experience. Danny did not want to be a plaything for Alex, and she absolutely did not want to be the kind of lesbian who is the experiment for young women curious but not serious, willing but unsure. She knew, though, that if Alex wanted to experiment with her to explore her own sexuality, that Danny would accommodate her, because the girl was just that hot. Alexandra's age and the extent of her inexperience in relationships of any kind combined to stop Danny from kissing her on multiple occasions the night they met. There was a certain sad strength she had felt when she closed the door to the taxi that would shuttle the tipsy young lady back to her dormitory room. She would have happily gone on with her life without ever having gotten the text from Alex the next night thanking Danny for getting her home safely. It took 2 days for Danny to figure out that Alex had returned to Hole in the Wall the following night and asked everyone who worked there about Danny until she found Jamie, who had Danny's number. When she found out how committed Alex had been to tracking her down to get in contact with her, she was flattered and enamored, and decided to rethink her stance on giving the girl a chance at intimate affections. So they met for tea, and they talked for hours and then parted ways for a day. Then they met for lunch and went to see a matinee and parted ways again. Then they met at Alexandra's dorm room and went out to a bar near campus and abstained from drinking alcohol. And when Alex told Danny that she wanted her to know that she just wanted to spend time with her and wasn't going to try to have Danny purchase alcohol for her, Danny leaned in until her cheek was brushed by Alexandra's long black waves of hair and waited to see if the girl would recoil. When she dropped her lower lid slightly and a contented smile curled across her thin lips, Alex leaned forward microns yet just enough for Danny to notice. Each extending their necks, they let the space between their lips become smaller and smaller, gently closing their eyes as they each inhaled the scent of the other. Their lips pressed against each other and parted enough for their breath to mingle. Waves of ecstatic joy coursed through Danny when she felt the moist touch of Alex's tongue stroke her bottom lip. Hoping to return the thrill, Danny quickly flicked her own tongue across Alex's upper lip. Both oral appendages barely grazing before retracting, they leaned away from each other, yet looked deep into the eyes of the other. Alexandra's lips moved and formed the words she whispered so quietly that no one but their intended audience would have detected that they were spoken at all. I want you. An overwhelming desire, a comfortable lust filling her psyche, Danny stood from the booth and took Alex's hand, pulling her out from behind the table and walking through the front door of the bar, acutely aware of how many eyes watched them as they went. Once outside, they walked in the direction of Alexandra's dorm room while holding hands. Her excitement would not be left to become something greater as Danny's conscience was sounding in her mind like an angry tenor with unlimited lung capacity. She squeezed Alexandra's hand lightly and sighed while looking at her. Alex looked at Danny and inquired, "What's wrong?" Danny stopped walking and they turned to face each other, standing on the sidewalk and letting the people who walked by overhear their conversation. "You are just incredible and beautiful and lovely to spend time with," she said with a true sadness in her eyes and voice. "And?" Alex asked, making her own apprehension of what was to come next clear. Not to delay the moment and to offer some resolve, Danny told her, "And that is what makes this the most hurtful of situations, because you are still young, although not in heart. You have a set of experiences that do not yet give you a full view of who you are, where you are, and what you truly want in life. And that does not detract from your beauty at all. In fact, it makes you even more desirable, because who wouldn't want the chance to be your next experience?" She used her free hand to brush a tendril of Alexandra's hair that had hung in front of her face to behind her ear. Alex smiled at the gesture and the compliment, phrased as a rhetorical question. "But it does put me in a precarious situation." She saw the frustrated curiosity appear on Alex's face. "Because I want you, and what that entails might be much more than you understand, or are ready for, or even want." "But that's the case in any relationship," Alex protested. "We take a chance in being together so we can see if we are good at being together." The girl's insight astounded Danny. "Good, like happy and fulfilled and excited and—" Danny cut her off by stepping closer so their faces were millimeters apart. Danny leaned her upper body back to look into Alex's eyes. "You are so enticing that I would have us kiss right here." And Danny watched the willful defiance of social mores cast over Alexandra's face as the eyes of each focused on the other's lips. "But that would only ignite me and press me to bring you home, take you to bed and strip us down to caress and grind with all intention of bringing pleasure to the surface." She leaned forward again, and Alex did not lean away. "That is what I have in mind." She let her vision coast over every contour of Alexandra's face, and she exhaled to vent free her rampant desires. "And I don't want to put out the fire we have got going with a wash of wetness." Alex involuntarily smiled wide with a laugh, and Danny knew she had coaxed them both away from the dramatic edge lovers are always eager to stand upon. Not to be crass, that is, Danny said, and turned so they could keep walking, still hand in hand. She stopped Alex again and gazed directly into her eyes. "Look, kiddo," Danny started, "if you are going to do this with me, it needs to be something you are so certain of that we connect in thought and feeling, and we don't just fumble around with these bodies, beautiful as they are. We are more than them." She turned her head while bowing it forward and looked at Alex, who was losing the frustration from her brow. "The fact that you can understand me now, that I am telling you something that really is more sweet than bitter, is endearing and leads me to want you more and more." She righted her head. "And that is why we need to take it slow, so that I know that I am not an amusement for you to use to figure yourself out." "So it is about the age difference," Alex said, without slackening her grip on Danny's hand. "No," Danny was quick to reply. "What's 2 years? And that's my point." "What's your point?" Alex said as they turned the corner onto the block of her dormitory. 2 years is not that large of a span of time, but a lot can happen in 2 years, and the difference in experience is what it is about." "But we'll never be matched up in experience. You will always have a couple years more than me in that." "What if I stopped for you to catch up?" Danny asked. "How are you going to stop having experiences?" Alex asked. "Not all experiences, silly. I'm not going into suspended animation for the next 2 years. But I would stop looking for that time so that you can catch up." "You want me to have experiences with other people, and you'd be okay with that?" "Well, yes, but no, and definitely not. I'm realizing how that sounded, and I may be really bad at explaining this, but trust me, it will be good." They stood before her dormitory's front doors and turned to face each other again. "I want us to be together, to spend time together, and love spending time together more. And then let the curiosity you have become the kind of desire I have, the lust coupled with certainty. And if we try to rush to relieve the sexual tensions, that difference would lead to a lopsided expression of sexual love." "You are so right and beautiful and wise about this," Alex said. "And it makes me want you more than I ever thought I would want anyone." "And I have no idea what is what. I'm only 21, Danny replied. "That makes it even better, because I know you are this good while still this young." Alex stepped closer to Danny. "And fucking gorgeously hot." Danny felt her resolve start to quake. She touched her free hand to Alexandra's cheek as she spoke. 2 years, so that we can legally have a bottle of wine together and discuss our favorite social theories and get comfortable until our clothes peel away and we come together." Alex swallowed hard and hesitated. "I guess there is only one question then." "What's that?" Danny asked. "What kind of wine?" Alex unfurled a knowing smile and Danny followed suit. "I think we should start with a good Shiraz when the time comes." Danny took Alexandra's other hand in her own and tugged her closer. They kissed with the same passionate comfort as they had earlier, and Danny rethought her voiced decision of 2 years. "Shiraz it will be then," Alex said, and moved towards the front door of the building, letting her hands linger on Danny's as she went. Danny watched her enter the building and shivered with desire as Alex turned to wave when she pressed the button for the elevator. They blew kisses to each other and happily played with the catching of the kisses in the air. The elevator arrived and Alex stepped in, looking through the glass of the building's lobby to wave again, and put her hand over her heart, keeping her eyes on Danny as the doors slid closed. Danny sighed and turned away from the moment, content that she had done right by the beautiful young lady to whom she felt the strongest connection she had yet to know with another. She savored the desire she felt for Alex, knowing that it was matched by Alexandra's desire for her. And, as any strong-willed lover of women would be prone to do after such an emotional event, she went back to her apartment and decided to make use of the box of organic red henna hair dye she had bought a few weeks earlier. 2 hours later, her noggin donned the red wet ringlets of tendrils tempered by the non-toxic coloring and conditioning wrought by Lawsonia inermis. Having hydrated the greenish powder with shredded pomegranate skin boiled in water, the red was accentuated and bore a dark orange hue upon her blonde hair. Worried that the color would not fade, she searched online for information regarding the coloring effects henna was known to have on hair. The message boards she located on the subject were littered with people in her current situation concerned about hair color being reassured by people who were long-time users of the plant-based dye that the bold orange would fade quickly, leaving a rich and deep red in its stead. She had looked those message boards up on her phone while in bed, the same phone that was in her hand while she sat in her running car, collecting all these thoughts about her life in the last 2 weeks while the engine burned gas that was paid for by her hours spent making coffee for patrons of the shop where she worked. It had only been 3 days since that last interaction with Alex. They had texted and talked on the phone and kept the fire burning steadily. When Alexandra asked what her plans were for tonight, Danny told her about the dinner and about how she would shut her phone off during the dinner. Alex told her that she had an errand to run, but would text Danny later and hoped to have a good surprise for her tonight. The air of mystery that churned was on Danny's mind early at dinner, but her role in the conversation, her instigations and interjections were a great distraction from the lust fiercely gripping her consciousness with warm, wiry wants. The messages had greater meaning than they let on, and she was so taken by what those non-words with terrible grammar signified that she let herself ponder in silence those memories that she now realized might have been viewed clearly by the reader. Further ignoring the hum of the engine, she used her phone to type a response. "Hey, sweetness. Just got done. Ready for some fun, but want to get ready and clean. Give me 90 minutes to shower and meet me at my place." She hit send and followed with a second. "You can tell me how you procured the Shiraz once you get there." And she hit send again, immediately voicing an expletive that portrayed her frustration with herself for having neglected to include a space between two of her words. Her unintentional compounding was enough to coax her mind to be free from the phone, and she tossed it onto the passenger seat with exaggerated exasperation. She put the car in gear and began pulling out of the spot, requiring too great an angle to pull clear of the cars surrounding hers. She had to reverse a little before pulling forward again to get clear to the street. At that moment, her phone chimed with the notification sound of an arriving text message. Half in the spot and half out, she reached over and grabbed the phone, oblivious to any other happenings in the world. She looked at the phone and bore an excitement that she had not known ever before, such a strange emotion from such a simple communication. "I will see you and be there 90 minutes. Go! Noticing the texts speak the abbreviated lingo this time, and not caring to think it's something detrimental to communication, Danny bit her lower lip lightly with the thought of seeing Alexandra at her place with a bottle of wine and willing to explore what would be between them. Danny had not planned on letting them reach this point of intimacy so quickly. She had really intended to let more time pass. But the innovation of the girl, the determination of Alexandra to put in place those accoutrements that would make for an intimate setting, was endearing and giving reason to venture further with her. As her mind began to wander to the possibility of the naked flesh of their torsos pressing with attenuated warmth against each other, the horn of the car behind her honked and startled her back to the task at hand. She tossed the phone onto the passenger seat again. All right, sorry, she mumbled while checking over her shoulder. Haven't you ever seen a girl in love? We lose track of everything else. She looked in her rearview mirror and raised her right hand in an apologetic gesture to the silhouette of the man driving the car that was waiting with bated exhaust to take the spot once her car had vacated it. And this is about as perfect as it gets.